I mean, this is that which I and others have been saying is inevitable. I mean, this is the inevitable collapse of Ukraine. The Ukraine venture was unsustainable. Militarily, Ukraine simply can't slug it out with Russia, even when backed by the material and financial assistance of Europe and the United States. Um, we're now seeing Ukraine economically. It's a literal basket case. There is no functioning economy. It's all artificial, propped up, corrupt as the day is long. Um, we see a very difficult winter approaching for Ukraine. Their energy infrastructure has been taken out. They're now going to the generator economy, which means that prices for everything, even under optimal conditions, will rise 20-25% this winter, and that's 20-25% in an already dysfunctional, non-functioning economy. This will lead to political collapse.
What he's describing isn't just a setback, it's the mathematical end of the road. No nation can fight a long war when its economy is on life support and its energy grid is in ruins. You can prop things up with foreign money for a while, but eventually reality wins. And in Ukraine's case, reality is hitting faster than anyone in Washington wants to admit. When the lights go out and prices skyrocket, people stop believing in political promises. That's when governments fall, not from battlefield defeat, but from collapse at home.
Around Zelensky, the walls are falling. Um, I don't know how much longer he can hold on, if he's capable of holding on, if people want him to hold on. You know, he he was always a figurehead, around which different power structures were constructed, and we see now one of the big power structures, the Yermak power structure, totally collapse, and there's really nothing to replace it. Um, and then we layer on top of that just the fact that Europe is just 100% dysfunctional when it comes to Ukraine. All talk, no action. They're incapable of any real action. I'm not worried about any escalation from Europe because they can't escalate. They have nothing to escalate with. Um,
Zelensky was always surrounded by competing power centers, and now those pillars are crumbling one by one. When the air power faction collapsed, it exposed just how thin his real authority has always been, and with nothing left to replace that structure, his position becomes more symbolic than functional. Add to that a Europe that talks loudly but carries no tools, no leverage, no real military capacity, and the picture becomes even clearer. Ukraine isn't just losing support, it's discovering those supporters never had the ability to save it in the first place. That's when a political collapse stops being a question of if and becomes when.
so it comes down to the United States managing the fall of Ukraine, and this, in the end, is what we're witnessing here. Is this a helping hand or is this a euthanasia? You know, we don't we don't know exactly what's happening right now. One thing we do know is that Russia's in the catbird seat here. They're driving this. All they have to do is sit back and literally point to the scoreboard. Anytime the United States hesitates, tries to play tough with sanctions, just point to the scoreboard, because Russia just keeps scoring every day, more and more, and there's nothing left for the Ukrainians. So we're approaching total collapse of the military, and when that happens, it's over. It's unconditional surrender. And so the United States, in many ways, it's a race against the clock to see if they can get Ukraine to agree to something that allows something called Ukraine that isn't totally controlled by Russia to exist, or if Russia just gets everything at once.
This is the part Washington doesn't want to talk about. The war is no longer about victory, it's about managing the fallout. At this stage, the question isn't whether Ukraine can be saved, but whether the United States can shape the terms of its collapse, and meanwhile Russia doesn't need to posture or negotiate, the scoreboard speaks for them. Every day Ukraine loses ground, the leverage shifts further east. When a military reaches the edge of total breakdown, diplomacy becomes a scramble for scraps, and that's exactly the moment we're watching unfold in real time.
The United States tolerated Ukrainian corruption, encouraged Ukrainian corruption. Some could say benefited from Ukrainian corruption, so long as Ukraine was able to deliver the goods on the battlefield, to have a robust defense, carry out counteroffensives on call, invade Kursk. all these things. The United States held their nose. I mean, it was so blatantly obvious when Congress would not even allow auditing mechanisms to be put in place because they know the truth. The truth has been known from day one that Ukraine is fundamentally corrupt from the top to the bottom. There's no aspect of Ukraine that's not corrupt. Even the anti-corruption forces, they don't work for Ukraine. They appear to have been, constructed at the behest of the United States as a mechanism of control. According to Ukrainian telegram channels, to take that as a grain of salt, but historically, they've actually, I wouldn't quote them except that historically, they've been fairly accurate in reading the tea leaves of Ukrainian politics and calling things out. They
This is the uncomfortable truth behind the entire project. Corruption wasn't a bug in the system. It was the system. Washington tolerated it, funded it, and at times even used it, as long as Kyiv delivered results on the battlefield. That's why Congress fought so hard against basic auditing. They knew exactly what those books would reveal. And when even the so-called anti-corruption units answer to foreign interests, not the Ukrainian people, you're not looking at reform, you're looking at a controlled asset. In the end, a house built on corruption doesn't crumble quietly, it collapses all at once.
the smartest people at the table right now. Their diplomatic corps is genius. Um, do they make mistakes? Everybody makes mistakes. But Russia knows exactly what's going on. Putin has said from the very beginning that this war won't be over until the root causes of the conflict are resolved permanently. So what the hell does Europe think they're going to do? You think Russia's going to sit there and go, okay, yeah, we were just kidding. We're not going to solve the root causes. We're going to leave Ukraine there so that you can pump them up 10 years from now and we can do this all over again. That isn't going to happen. There will be no peace deal that allows this to happen. None, zero. And Russia's in the driver's seat. There's no pressure that can be brought on Russia right now to make them change their mind.
This is the part Western leaders still refuse to accept. Russia isn't negotiating from weakness, it's negotiating from absolute leverage. Moscow set its objectives on day one and hasn't budged an inch. Meanwhile, Europe keeps pretending it can force a compromise without having any tools to enforce it. But wars don't end because the West gets tired. They end when the side in control decides the terms. And right now, Russia has zero incentive to agree to any deal that simply resets the clock for another conflict a decade from now. They're closing the door permanently, and Europe still hasn't realized it.
Solely focused on financial gain. I mean, traditional geopolitical thinking's out the window right now. Europe is, nobody cares. That's just the reality. You don't matter. It's just over. Uh, they're not even coordinating with you, not even calling you. They had their meeting, with the Ukrainians, and Rubio doesn't even get to make a phone call to Europe. He doesn't get to go to Rubio; just gets to go back and play, Venezuela games. Witkoff and Jared are off to Moscow to do the thing. Why? It's all a business deal right now. And I'll tell you what, Russia has far greater business potential than Ukraine does. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to sway the United States. If Ukraine doesn't want to play games, then Russia will absorb Ukraine. And Trump has already acknowledged this. And then the United States will indirectly be able to reap the benefits of Ukrainian resources by having business deals with Russia. But this is coming down to one giant business deal. Is it going to succeed? I don't know. I don't know if Trump has the ability to pull this off, because there is a lot of political opposition to this in the United States, and there is midterm elections coming up.
This is where the mask really slips. The war, the strategy, the alliances, all of it is being pushed aside in favor of raw transactional politics. Europe isn't being consulted because Europe no longer matters in the calculation. Washington is treating Ukraine not as a partner, but as an expendable bargaining chip in a larger business negotiation with Moscow. And the truth is, Russia offers far more economic upside than a shattered Ukrainian state. The real question now isn't moral or strategic. It's whether Trump can push this deal through against the political backlash waiting for him at home. Because once great power politics is reduced to profit margins, anything becomes negotiable, including Ukraine itself.
The idea that you're going to strong arm Russia into accepting a deal that doesn't give Russia what it's going to get if it just continues fighting, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop this, outcome on the battlefield. It's over. It's all over but the dying. I mean, there's a lot more Ukrainians that could be killed. And Russia, tragically, is willing to kill them if that's what it takes. But Europe is it doesn't even register anymore. It's embarrassing to be European today. Literally, I'm sorry, but you earned it. You earned it through your sheer incompetence and your lack of ethics and your lack of morality and your lack of anything. You allowed Ukraine to be sacrificed as a proxy, and now you're paying the price because there's nothing there. I mean, I don't know how many times I have to hear Germany and France and everybody talk about this 800,000 man army that they're going to build. Good luck. I wish you the best. Please build it.
This is where the fantasy finally breaks. No one is going to strong-arm Russia into accepting less than what it can win outright on the battlefield. And with the current momentum, Moscow knows time is working for them, not against them. Europe keeps talking about leverage it doesn't actually possess, and the result is a kind of geopolitical self-humiliation. They turned Ukraine into a proxy, then discovered they never had the strength to back that gamble. Now they speak of building massive armies they can't afford, can't staff, and can't sustain. It's theater, and everyone at the table knows it.
Because the more responsibility you show towards having a conducive approach towards bettering genuine European security framework, the more Russia will not be paranoid about, your intent on Ukraine. Let Russia win in Ukraine. They've won. Accept it. What you need to do now is save NATO if that's what you want to do. And the only way to save NATO now is to sit down and talk with the Russians about a European security framework that allows an empowered Russia to peacefully coexist with a weakened but still robust NATO. There will be a gray zone. There will be part of NATO. There's people out there who have misconstrued what rollback to 1997 means. It doesn't mean that Poland, the Baltic states stop being NATO. Russia's never said that they have to leave NATO. What Russia says, though, is that the military infrastructure that has been pushed east since 1997, that has to come back. For instance, the ballistic missile sites in Poland and Romania, they have to go. Massive NATO bases, they have to go. That the Eastern European nations will be NATO nations protected by Article 5, but they won't be bases from which NATO can project power against Russia.
This is the conversation Europe has avoided for a decade but can't run from anymore. Ukraine is lost. The real question now is whether NATO wants to survive the aftermath. And survival means acknowledging Russia's victory and rebuilding a security framework that doesn't treat Moscow like an enemy to be encircled. Russia isn't asking for NATO to disappear. It's demanding the rollback of infrastructure that turned Eastern Europe into a launch pad. If Europe wants stability, it has to stop pretending those bases made it safer. Peace begins with realism, and realism means accepting the map as it is, not as Brussels wishes it were.